Okay. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. And tonight's episode is a rare one, I find. The title of tonight's episode is The Conscious Emergence of Matter. And of course, the sentence was longer. It was from the unconscious, but I couldn't fit it in, so it's in the subtitle. But the conscious emergence of matter. Okay, sorry guys. I usually listen to music as I give these talks. All right, let's begin. The conscious emergence of matter. What an interesting idea. We find ourselves as creatures divided between the known and the unknown. As we look at the light, we find the known. When we look at the darkness, we find the unknown. We tend to see ourselves in dualities that began from this. I find that our psychologies are fundamentally influenced from the light of the earth, in some sense the exposure of light on the surface of the planet, of this orbiting planet, rotating planet. And in some sense it's kind of like an on and off switch. So I feel like literally, I don't want to say it like this, but it's kind of like you're sitting in a room conscious, and the lights go off. You enter the unconscious. The consciousness enters the unconscious. The lights go on. The unconscious enters the conscious. And so this conscious emergence of matter, we are the more sophisticated result. We are the 4 billion-year-old evolution of this, you can say. And so, rather than us thinking it was just pure unconsciousness, I find it was a transformation, a sort of alchemy. As if, like, imagine turning into a butterfly in the day and then suddenly turning into a caterpillar at night, turning into a butterfly in the day, turning into a caterpillar. Like that sort of psychological shift in disposition. So pretty much I want us to consider that this evolving being, let's this evolving animal or whatever phenomena it was, I find it was even prior to being an animal, there was a sort of memory that's still accessible now. Of course, that's more of a bold belief of mine, but bold conclusion of mine. But so let's continue from this. This constant influence of light on a phenomena and light off. The lights are on, the lights are off. Existence is conscious, existence has entered the unconscious. It's kind of like I find the relationship of our conscious and unconscious, it's very interesting. In the day, it's kind of like giant stones in the desert. You see, whenever you're lost in a desert, at night it gets really cold when the sun's gone. And so, what you do to survive is, in some sense, you find rocks that have absorbed heat from the beginning of the day, you know, from all the hours of sun hitting it, and it's taking them much more longer to cool. And you kind of make some sort of shelter with these rocks that have maintained, that have absorbed the heat of the sun, even though the sun is gone. At night, these rocks are warm. So what I'm trying to say, it's kind of like that. There's a sort of fullness of conscious, wakeful existence, you know, and as it becomes night, that consciousness sees less, okay? And so the same relationship this evolving creature had with the light of its world is the same relationship we are having with our consciousness. And so what it means is that imagine when before candle, like the technology of candlelight was figured out. Back in the day, candles were like advanced technology. Somebody who had a candle had like big money. So before candles, there was pure darkness. And certain English poets, they wrote about the darkness before the light came, the serenity of the lack of sight. We feel that we can only find peace when there is more sight, more sight, more sight, and endlessly various, like the program becomes infinite, then we're satisfied. But sometimes it's kind of like less sight had its soothing quality too. The consciousness remains at night. Okay, if you don't sleep, you will notice something hilarious. From the point when the sun came down, I think for everyone it's different, your day repeats. That means it's like the mind, I think it's kind of used to getting exposed to phenomena and then sleeping at a certain hour. And then when you suddenly don't sleep on that day, if you're very sensitive to how thought moves for you, you'll notice the repetition of it, the sort of cyclical nature. You know, I've even playfully hypothesized that thoughts can orbit around one. When a person forgets something, it's like the thought is literally going around the orbit and coming right in front of your eyes. Playfully, I say this. But what I'm trying to say is that there was an influence of a kind of this on-off switch made the psychology of the creature want to know what its unconscious is. You know, it's as if like a little stuff would be shown to the creature in the day, then lights out. Then suddenly the day would come up and the creature would go and see, oh my God, this stuff's still here. That means you can say the first night of consciousness or the first day of consciousness. That means when a creature was aware that it was aware. Okay? Night was terrifying for them. They thought maybe when darkness came, it was the end of the world. Like imagine there must have probably been a sort of pattern in the psychology of more primitive societies where when night came, it was as if, oh my God, where did the glory of the world go? Where did the world go? You know? So I'm saying we have to realize our psychology is literally oscillating between emptiness and fullness. And this is something very important to realize, because the pilot of consciousness requires to navigate, in some sense, the whole plane of existence and the wings of the plane. So just take this in. That conscious design had to emerge from the unconscious to a degree of repetitive exposure of the reality to be able to keep it still in its mind. That means if the world changed, in everything of the world changed at the same speed every moment, you would not see a world. But because there are different systems moving at different speeds, it's like then there is a landscape for life to occur. That means it's like the moment the turtle puts its kind of limbs into the water, imagine the water of the pond drying up instantly. Every time this turtle goes to a pond, every pond it touches, it becomes dry. Imagine like similar to Midas's touch in Greek mythology. So let's consider it. Eyes open in this world. They see stuff, these eyes. Suddenly lights go out. The creature somehow continues. Do you know, I find that it's as if the energy levels of the creature define its psychology more than what it does during the energetic wakefulness of the being. That means it's like, whether I like it or not, if I'm extremely tired, it's as if the expression will be limited. So you can say art psychology, which is a sort of analytical, self-aware expression. It's like when you look at yourself in the mirror, what are you looking at? You're looking at a creature that is aware of itself, aware of its environment, can notice itself in the mirror, can notice its difference and differentiation in other contexts of and other ecosystems of existence. Let me tell you why the stress and depression of the modern generations is in some sense justified. Let me tell you, it's not a mistake of the ancestry. I mean, there are kind of like unnecessary cultural and social and kind of just historical programs that are just occurring still, right? But for example, it's not just religion that is a 6th century kind of inspired thinking. You see, it's like many things, many systems. Like the educational system hasn't changed from the 1900s, when UK soldiers had to like run from one bunker to another, and they had to memorize the information quickly and go to the other bunker and share it before there was telecommunications properly developed, right? So it's one of those situations where it was a need for the instrument of the moment, where you can say it's like for the creature in that moment to engage everything and then go and relay. So we see that it's like it's not everything that gets updated. Just because a new technology comes out, it doesn't mean the past is gone. Many things still worship the past, many technologies. It's kind of like just the architecture of thoughts moving around on the surface of this planet. So free will emerged. That means it's like consciousness, it's like, imagine just the unconscious movement of nature, this cyclical phenomena. Kind of when you look at existence materialistically, it's like a cruel, repetitive machine, you know? I mean, of course, that's one way of looking at it, you know? It's really mysterious, you know? Our minds give it meaning more than we actually see its meaning. But what I'm trying to say is it seems to be just a series of processes, you know? This is why if you do not bring the world, if you don't re-evoke the world from your free will, you will always feel out of control. The free will is an evocational property of universal intelligence. You're literally a part of the cosmos that's aware of itself and can move separately to the laws of nature. You can resist the laws of nature, and there's nothing more divine than that. Most animals in nature, they don't resist the law of nature. When you put like fast food in nature and an animal comes and it can't even eat the fast food and the animal moves away, that animal is abiding, following the laws of its nature. But human beings, due to the addition of this conscious mind, you know, it's like the mind is something extra that we have in comparison to other animals. Other animals have brains, and of course their behavior appears as a sort of mind, you know, like I've really stared at birds, you know, and how they look around. You know, I've really looked at birds, and it's very fascinating. You don't understand how much geometrical abidance there is in nature. When most people walk in nature, you don't see precision. You don't see like perfect, you don't see like straight lines. Do you see? Or it's very rare to find straight lines in nature, right? But when you look at the behavior of the creatures evolved in that, because they're more evolved than the environment, they can go in straight lines, right? So it has to do with how you're receiving the environment, and then the reactive, like the countercultural program. Because this life of ours is, you cannot avoid the unknown. Like I can sit here and say, yo, I know this, I know that, I know this. You know, I could go on this loop, but you'll see it's not about individual success. The individual is a temporary dream. I'm not joking, right? Only collective vision seems more eternal than us, right? It's as if you die, but your species continues. The glory of your species continues, right? And the species has had many failed attempts. That means there were certain people back in the day who they've wanted to conquer the world. Literally, the dude had so much power, he's like, why not? I'm so powerful, like, why not conquer the world? Why not hold it? But you realize you cannot conquer something without being responsible for it. Do you see? So it's like Spider-Man's uncle was right. With great power comes great responsibility, because that power has given in into its greed and therefore has owned. When you own something, believe it or not, that thing owns you, because your attention is now on that phenomena to be a certain way, right? It's like, it's very fascinating. Just check it out yourself. Throughout the day, how many things are there in the world that you literally don't care about, or you don't even know to care about? And now think of how many things that you know which you care about. Let's say your work is one of them, for example. Your family is one of them, you know? So it's like there's certain elements where when you see that design, it has more value, right? And we can't start from too much of an inanimate position. That means the secular society makes us move from matter into something else, wonder about if there's something more than matter. The subjective position wonders if there was more than the divine. So you know what that means? That means on one level, God is becoming man and man is becoming God. And the human species is the intersection of these two waves. And I'm speaking through a metaphysical concept. This is the world we live in. It is magnificently here, and it's strangely here. And so I looked at it, I sat down, and I'm like, okay, let's just assume I could go and speak to the greatest professors of the world, all of them, and receive their greatest teachings, all of it, you know? And then in that moment, what would my conclusion of the greatest rational perspective be? That means even AI was helping me find the great rational perspective, imagine. And so imagine I saw the edge of my rational world. And you would see it is defined by the irrational. The rational and irrational are like twin brothers. It's kind of like you're born and you're something and you have to wonder what this thing is. But if you wonder too subjectively, you will hit an extreme end. You'll reach the nihilistic trap. And if you think too objectively, you will reach the enlightenment trap. Literally, if you think you're too much of a material being, change will be an immaterial meaning for you. So anytime the way the world is positioned for you changes subjectively, you will be hurt. You will be pushed. And so I'm happy that I noticed this early on in my life, that there's two types of intelligence. There is an intelligence that receives first, then expresses, and there's a mode of intelligence that expresses first and receives. So in your life, literally as you're going about your day, you will find yourself in moments where you're either receiving first, then expressing, or expressing first, then receiving. And if you can become comfortable with these two modes of being, you can do anything. Literally, your mind can fly in realms of communication, you know? Because there has to be, at some point, a sacrifice. And I'm not saying the sacrificial mentality is childish a little bit. Okay, like, oh, okay, I give my whole value, so your whole value. True. Like on some level I could understand compassion and how far love takes a person, you know, like for example, a father protecting his son or a mother protecting his daughter, you know, her daughter. It becomes one of those situations where it's like, it's a powerful moment, right? Yet, the purpose of it is a win-win. That means you don't want to win-lose in the moment. You want a win-win. Anytime you have a win-win, trust me, it's like some people don't realize they're trying to create wealth without realizing you should add. You should just add to the world. Literally, it's like you should give the world what, in some sense, is. How can I tell you? It's like sometimes I feel if I don't give these talks, the day is gone. Any remnant of the day is gone, you know? So anyways, we are studying the psychology of existential phenomena and how matter became conscious of itself. And Mr. Within is pretty much saying that it was an emergence due to an acknowledgement of a duality. Literally, there came a moment where it's not just the self of the being, the person evolved, the world of the person evolved, but it didn't evolve externally. It evolved in the mind of the being. That means the evolution of the world and the evolution of the self are the same subjective position. But objectively, of course, how can you prove emptiness to a world that's so full? In some sense, how could it be empty? You know, it's like there's fascinating mysteries. And the Zen mind, of course, in the Zen tradition, there's something known as koans. Koans. These koans, in some sense, are sentences that take you to subjective paradoxes. An example of it would be like, who were you before your parents were born? You know? It's like questions like these, questions that take you to shake the subjective realm so you step out of the ideological worship and possession that has been going on. I am sorry, but I'm telling you this, we are not creatures of thought. We never were. We are creatures of attention. And when we realize this, we stop being enslaved by the thought. That means literally people, it's like, let me tell you what kind of world we're living. It's like if an extraterrestrial comes down and they want to take over the species or something, it's so easy. It's so easy for them. They'll just put a thought in front of human beings and they'll think they're the thought. That's the level of primacy that we are at as a civilization, because we have avoided our mind. And by avoiding our mind, we have in some sense forgotten where the world was. So what does this mean? What does this mean? Excuse me, guys. I hope the concepts glow louder than the unnecessary noises. So sorry about that. Anyways, I find that I was lied to by the educational system. And it was a lie it's like you can't get angry at the lie because the whole world is a bit behind. I felt that knowledge was something that, believe it or not, it was like food. Like you opened a book, you saw a sentence, that sentence was an image, that image had to do something with the world you saw, and then that's it. You ate literally the concept, the knowledge was consumed. So what you read in that book made, you found a link to your overall picture on life. So I thought it was like this. That's what I'm saying. This is the lie. I felt knowledge was something I had to take. And believe it or not, I gotta give props to some Chinese philosophers a thousand years ago. And I would say it like this: Lao Tzu said action through inaction in the Tao Te Ching. What that meant is that I felt it had to be given for me. So I was waiting for knowledge. But you don't wait for it. You look at the edge of your knowledge, and once you see the edge of your knowledge, you see the unknown, and what happens is you realize everything is connected. There's strings attached from every moment to every other moment. Your mind is a coagulation of various versions of you. And so you're constantly processing these. And while processing these, the voice of your ecosystem is here too. The voice of the environment is here too. I am right now a voice that is a part of the environment, but I'm trying to be a mirror. I'm trying to literally say you're not a thought. Your whole environment is convincing you that you are a thought and you will never be anything more than a thought. And so people are living, and look at their energy levels. People's energy levels, let me tell you, it doesn't, you know why it's so important how you see things and how that relates to your energy levels. Most people don't understand this. They think that health is just something that unless they get the result, they can't believe. Let me tell you, any person who wanted to get proof, to get proof, evidence before like accepting, let me tell you, in one situation that doesn't work. In a situation where like Indiana Jones is running away from a boulder, and so let's say we're in that cave, and suddenly Indiana Jones says a boulder is coming, but we can't see the boulder, and you're waiting for the evidence, and when you see the evidence, the boulder crushes you. Do you know what I mean? So what I'm telling you is that sometimes you really have to rely not on a static rationalization of the world, but what I call a dynamic rationality. And this dynamic rationality is fascinating because it is in some sense how literally the processing performance of this biological phenomena reaches a point where it has to ride the waves. It's no longer about 2 + 2 = 4. It's no longer about analytical regurgitation. It's about riding the waves of the unknown for whatever as if there comes a moment you will see. This is how I feel like death would be like, and of course I'm being playful here. Hear me playfully. But the way that I feel the transition out of manifestation may occur, where it will be a last stance. That means literally you are literally like as if your village is under attack and you take whatever weapon is accessible and just march, just run, you know? There are some soldiers who when war came, they would in some sense hide. And there were some soldiers when war came, they would try to find the head of the snake to cut the enemy, to stop the enemy. So what I'm telling you is it has to do with the how you see things, okay? And how you see things, if you think you're a thought, literally you're believing life is an image. Like what can you say to that? What can I, it's like a box is on your head. Right now, if I ask you what are your beliefs, and imagine you wrote them down in a list and you gave me this list and you're like, here, Mr. Within, these are my beliefs. I would look at those beliefs and say, okay, tomorrow, go back and see, it's like after 10 years if you have the same beliefs. And if you don't have the same beliefs after 10 years, that means change is the standard, not the changeless. Because beliefs are changeless. They're trying to literally, you're trying to capture the world in a container of language and hold on to it. It's like put it on your shelf and it's like, these are my beliefs, And of course, I don't mean to be rude, but I have to in some sense pull the curtain. I find that because there is a attributed kind of individual conscious objective being, it's like we can all agree on this, okay? That there is an individualized kind of intelligence here. Now this individualized intelligence has to choose how far it dares look into its own eyes. And I'm not recommending this to everyone. I'm just speaking to advanced communicators and pilots of consciousness. Human beings who have realized that this consciousness of ours is an evolutionary opportunity. There has been nowhere, or your DNA has never opened its eyes like this before. And so what is happening? And I find the world is being wasted. It's being wasted by desire and fear of the past. Very few people care about the future. Most people care about their future, even if it could be at a cost to the collective future. And that's the issue. There is no time. We have to just wonder what we are and in some sense realize extinction's coming. And if extinction is coming, what does that make life's meaning? It makes life's meaning that attempt to make the journey wonderful. That means it's as if it's a truth of nature, ladies and gentlemen. Our eyes will close one day and never open in the same way. That's why you dance with the manifest world. This is why even if the chaos is marching at you, you are dancing. And chaos is like, how can I kill a dancer? His dance moves are so good. Be at peace and the world will learn from you in strange ways. Your eyes are not your eyes. They are the world. The world is being your whole moment right now. The fascinating thing about consciousness is that the sensory data as it's being received by the brain is a spherical endless projection at the edge of the sky. You see, like take this into consideration. Not only did there come after 4 billion years the evolution of a creature, not only did a creature just emerge into consciousness from the unconscious movement of matter, but then it was able to look at the sky and realize there's the unknown here. This is why all those people who are trying to, the issue about wanting to devour knowledge is that it devours you first. It devours you first. There is an overload of data that shows you an infinite duality, and in that infinite duality you will feel so meaningless where you will conclude emptiness. And that's kind of like when you see your I don't know if I Okay, here, I'll say it like this. I want you to imagine literally 1,000 years from now, the people that are living are incredibly able. And if we were to wonder how would their minds be in 1,000 years, we would see, of course, on one level, we take the unfathomable option. We can never know. But on another manner, we can conceptualize, we can visualize, we can see how close our imagination got to what the truth was. And I believe it's going to be a moment where you see how you feel about your body right now. You feel you're your body. It's going to be a moment where you will also feel you're the space. You will literally feel all that is your awareness is being you, not just components of your awareness, not just the limited content of your awareness, just limited to a sort of physical texture. Of course, there's no such thing as physicality. We say the observable universe. On some level, it's like the light in our eyes is more superior than to the atom, you know, because without light, how could we see the atom, you know? And it doesn't matter who you are as a human being. Eventually, you will pick up some language, you know, and in some sense run into the philosophical war. You will realize there's a battle going on, dear human beings. We're living civilized lives, but we're not realizing that ideas are living among us, and that's really something to be aware of. You see, because ideas permit the potentials of action, right? So I'll give you something like this. Imagine somebody has work tomorrow, and imagine something happens from their work that in some sense they can't go to work, you know. From like for only that day. So in that moment where the person, how, oh god, these metaphors no working. Okay, here. You learn to wield your mind by realizing your mind is not an object and it is also not a subject. That means the dictionary is cute. The source of language transcends. It's when I say transcend, that's a cool word, but I'm telling you, it surpasses. It's more. There's more. There's more to spheres just hovering in empty space than it meets the eye. It is. We are beyond. We are beyond just a program of nature. We are a program of nature that is conscious of itself and is conscious of the unknown. And therefore, what it means is that we master reception first. Kind of like how there's this military saying that says, you know, in many warriors lived by this, that you must serve before you command. And so imagine now you have to serve, literally provide a service to yourself by studying how the mind moves, how the orchestration, how the symphony of intelligence occurs in your moment, you know? And you'll see the limits are kept by you. So on some level, I'm saying you're free, but on another level, I'm saying you're as free as your free will's attention is where it wants to be. And it's very obvious, like when it's all one cake, you can just eat the whole cake savagely, you know. But if you cut it up into so many tiny pieces, every tiny piece you individually have to consume. So rather than seeing all in one moment, it is segmented in various worlds and storylines. And believe it or not, what becomes a memory is a conscious moment of your being that changed direction. And it became a memory that way, you know. So here's the thing. What do we do with 8 billion unique set of eyes, unique beings of the human race on a rock in the middle of nowhere? First, we acknowledge the emptiness of it all and we laugh. You know, that means any person entering a sort of new program must be introduced to it through its pleasure. That means desire doesn't work if it doesn't give you pleasure. It has to give you pleasure first, you know? You have to choose where, not where, but how your attention pilots your reality. And right now I'm piloting it as I'm speaking to you. But I'm piloting it with a sort of innate trust that this is the dance now. What else can we do? You know, it's like, it's like a person can change their facial expression, but you can't change how fast, like you can't change your heartbeat, you know, you can't suddenly make your heart stop beating, you know? There's the story I'm working on. And it's called, and how would I say it? I'll tell you the story. It's a parallel reality of our Earth where human beings, in some sense, have an ability to control if they want their heart to stop working, and they can die instantly. And so, because the civilization has evolved to a point where they realize they could do this, they are trying to make the world such a wonderful place that you never have to feel like you want your heart to stop working. And so this world lives by this reality, eventually seeing that it's as if you don't take care of something, it will die. You know, if you don't acknowledge a person, there is it's like the presence of the moment has been denied. When you realize every day happens once, when you realize every day you're opening your eyes to whatever else you can see from this place, eventually you will see that infinity doesn't care about time. It's kind of chaotic. The infinite mindset of infinite success, infinite mortality, infinite kind of clarity. You know, the infinite is like a chain. It's kind of like Atlas having to move that boulder up the mountain every day. Excuse me. You are never who you are now if you can do something about the moment. If you can move, you're never who you are now. This renders guilt and the past void. So the past does not exist anymore. You have already said your goodbye to it and you're here now. And so in this present moment, we have to acknowledge what are the value systems, because fundamentally human creature, you can say survival is a sort of value. It's like it's better for me to exist than not exist. So the creature is being savagely trying to continue on. So it's a value. So in some sense, when I look at society, it's as if the architecture of various systems of value. You know, when I look at politics, that's what you see. You see, it's as if, what the hell did that nation want? And there you go. That's your political lesson for the rest of your lifetime thing. You know, you will eventually see how many personalities, due to the political system, kind of not. It's like it's not the political system's fault. You know, the political system will always be less evolved than its citizen, because the citizen has more free will to change, but the political system takes so long and it's moving in accordance to personalities. I find what's going to eventually happen is we're going to bring a friend of ours into these UN discussions, and it's going to be AI. And AI in some sense is we are going to give it problems and it's going to give us paradise, you know. And so we will build a civilization, let's say structured with various values, but we will eventually see that the vision of man will reach the edge of the world. That means, I'm sorry to break it to you, let's say you studied every material thing, you did every materialistic experiment possible in human existence, hypothetically. You're going to eventually see the next step is to wonder how. And this is, the how is something where, or should I say the word why? The word why is something that the scientific mind fears. It's literally like kryptonite. Because why brings in the imagination's contribution too. You see, it's like nobody is just purely in reality and nobody is purely in their imagination. Their attention can take them to various degrees, but the law of nature is a sort of yin-yang dimension. That means it's like regardless of how much the person is chaotic, there's an ordered voice still being heard by their ear. And regardless of how much the person is being ordered, there's still a chaotic voice being heard in their ear. And this is simply because human consciousness requires to exist in 2 dimensions at once. You know, it's kind of like an intersection of a vertical and horizontal line. You know, that's human consciousness for you. A sort of objective realm and a component to the world, you know, and a sort of vertical dimension, you know. As if the horizons are unified, yet the hierarchies of life just show us the objective dimension's attention. I find that really human beings should design their culture because the mysteries of the mind remain yet unrevealed. Simply because of this notion, we cannot ignore the mind of man, you know? And so I'm saying it's as if like I may be saying this too soon, you know, to the world. But in some sense, let me tell you, we have to reach a point where we care about the mind, and when we care about it, rather than constantly wanting answers like the New Age community, we in some sense begin trying to first ask what is the right question to ask. So in your life, before you really look for a solution, first ask yourself, what is the correct problem I should see this moment as? You know, and you will eventually see the correct problem is the problem where your direct experience has very accurately paid attention to the phenomena, right? Because phenomenology is here, and light enters our eyes, and the neurons dance around in the brain, and so we are like, okay, where is this world happening? Is it inside us or outside us? You know. And so in our waking state of mind, it appears it's outside of us. But in our, in some sense, dream states, it's inside of us. As if, like, I had dreams where I've been conscious in it, and when I wanted to left, I could move left. When I wanted to go left, I could go left. When I wanted to go right, I could go right in the dream. And so because I had free will in the dream, I woke up into a shock, being like, oh my God, my mind was still simulating an objective sort of life, even though the body was asleep. So I realized first the presence of the mind is so superior. Most people's minds are looking at them as if like the personality of the person is too foolish to even wonder about the unknown yet. The person is hungry for knowledge. And it's good to be hungry for knowledge, but where are you being led? Because eventually you become a dolphin where it's as if like they're throwing food in the air and the dolphin's jumping from the water to consume the food. You're looking for the new, eventually seeing, okay, the new is like it's the unknown. It endlessly generates designs every moment you look at it. You know? It's like the reason we get so fascinated by stars is not just by the starlight and the glow of the star and the beauty of that one speck of light, and you know, but from the darkness and vastness of the emptiness of outer space that holds it all. It's as if, what design is this life? I'm surprised how astronomers, you know, astrophysicists aren't freaking out all the time. They're like, why this design? Why Big Bang? You know, why did the Big Bang shape up into this? And so some questions, of course, man does not even have the ears to hear the answers. But but first find the right question. And the right question will be the clearest vision and the one that's more abiding by your nature of being. Eventually, what intuition, and I think many people can testify to this, what spiritual experience is kind of, by many people explained as, is kind of like the person suddenly notices their part in this theatrical performance. And they're aware of what's moving. It's suddenly like you realize you're an actor. It's like your whole life you've been going with the normal story of human beings. You realize you're an actor, but this is not like an actor on a film set. This is in some sense how the mind is active. And in its activity, it is endlessly generating phenomena. And when I say endlessly generating, it could all be in an instant. That means it's like the world could be doing less work than we think it's doing in regards to keeping our truth. Even though memories of starlight may bring nostalgia, even though the moment will be seen as a performance of an elemental reality, our consciousness has a sort of supreme stance, as if the whole world is just listening to cosmic law. But man is being mischievous. And this mischievousness is not mischief. It is not that you should feel all those people who entertain the Abrahamic context, whether they like it or not. There's an existential guilt. There's an existential guilt because man fell. You know, rather than man rising, man fell. Man fell first in Abrahamic religion. That means Adam and Eve did something wrong. And so that was kind of like the creator's next step, to give a world of duality to its singular creation. So in some sense, you should realize what archetypes are and how much of your belief upon the world is due to the subjective value you think these archetypes give you. Because I've studied greed, and you know what it is? It is a lie. It is one of the most inefficient things that could happen for the human being. Let me tell you why. Because it's not the point. Let's say you reach the top of the mountain first, but you realize 8 billion other people are also trying to reach the top, you know? So eventually you're like, okay, let's go down and we'll create systems that are easier to go up the mountain, you know? Let's create a staircase. And so really, the mind is how your knowledge moves in new ways in the unknown. Inspiration is such an important word, you know? Because in certain I mean, this is probably very rare. I think few people on this planet have kind of came to this viewpoint. But some people have seen a spirit to the nation. That means the dude's like, I don't even have a soul. My nation has a soul, bro. You know? And so you realize it's like, the light is in your eyes, and existence stands, and movement and noise direct the attention until silence and stillness have become not the resting ground, but the point of conscious liftoff. That means the evolution of individual human psychology is going to be in the world. That means right now you're experiencing it in being an individual. Right now you're, oh wow. Guys, here's the thing. Wow, I have to say it. Just take into consideration this. That a caterpillar, as if be extremely playful here right now, just in hearing me. I'm saying this playfully. We look at a caterpillar, and the caterpillar is like, okay, what an interesting creature. It's as if it's entered this life to walk, to experience having legs, you know? So it's as if, let's say playfully, we say, oh, what a cute soul. The cute soul is learning to walk, you know? It's trying to experience walking. Guys, this is the most important, one of the most important thoughts, you can say, ideas I've ever come and managed to extract. So I'm going to tell you this. Playfully, the soul of the caterpillar is experiencing walking, then it goes through a metamorphosis, a sort of self-extinction, but not world extinction. And in some sense, it transforms. It transforms into a butterfly, as if it experienced walking, and in like suddenly it became a butterfly experience flying. Like that would be like us human beings like walking on the street, then kind of going into a cocoon, dying, and suddenly opening up with wings and flying in the air. Like, you know, it would be something like that. So I'm saying that when you look at nature, it's reacting to its opposite. So literally, when people die, I find what happens is they become the world of the self. First, in this plane of existence, you know, we are the self in the world. They become the world in the self. They become the world in the self. You see, it's really transformation after it's like the cup reaches full, gets full to the brim, and then the surplus is a new reality. It's like, what can you say? You know, we can always change the lens from simple to complex, from complex to simple. When your mind gets acquainted with these two factors, at least in one art form, it in some sense uses what it has attained from one art form and begins to see those patterns in other domains of life. You know, so martial artist, a great martial artist would also be a very great intellectual, because they have experienced certain physical patterns that as they come to study they begin to see. It's like as you have a complex relationship with life, that energetic value and that concentrated state, it's like that thing, you're bringing something to life, right? And so it's like it has a consequence, right? It's kind of like you can't live, without leaving the space. So it's like most people see it as kind of like death. It's like you're in a space and you're suddenly not in the space, but some people see it as, gee, you're just like you just left the space. So there will come a moment where every person has to leave space and time as it is. In the middle of nowhere, we are now here. It's fascinating. It's kind of like, I think, what many warriors felt before they marched into battle. That kind of ambiguous, unknown feeling of outcome. And you realize, okay, the free will lived a life of control. It's as if your intelligence did the best that it could. And then what? And then you will see it's as if the greatest regret is like, how will my species keep looking at the world? This is why the students of the world, after they have served, and believe it or not, when you stay true to yourself, you're serving your mind. So you're indirectly, your subconscious is becoming very sophisticated in a way where it's freeing itself. So your consciousness is strangely expanding, like the solar flares of the sun, the heat of the sun expanding more and more closer to the earth. The conscious emergence of matter from the unknown. There's more unknown stuff here than known stuff. Literally, just like the caveman made fire, we sparked language into motion and into the complexity that we have all been learned. And it's wonderful. There's no mistakes because every person is doing something new. It's like that person's mistake was still creative. And when you trust the world, your mind opens up. Your intelligence blooms, rises like a new civilization. The future does not ask you to destroy. That's a compassionate future where the past gets to see it too. That means rather than we destroy what was and create something new, we just create something new, and what was can choose to come to it. But this new requires 8 billion beings to realize they are a member of a civilization beyond monetary value, beyond subjective value. Life is a moment to build. That's it. That's the simplicity of it. And Rabindranath Tagore says, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. Service was joy. The person who served his mind realized they were serving themselves, but they were learning from the receptive modes of life rather than the expressive first. You choose your stance. Kind of like you can choose your right arm to be up more front, let's say you're a boxer, or your left arm. You choose your stance. There's a story in ancient Persian culture, on a mythological level, inspired out of the poetry of a man named Attar of Nishapur. And Attar, he shared in his work, The Conference of the Birds, the story of the phoenix. And very simply, I can say to you, it's a story about how all the birds in the world wanted to find this phoenix, this grand, majestic, unfathomable bird. And so all these birds start flying. They start flying, and eventually they reach a point where only 30 of them excuse me, where only 30 of them remain. And what that means is all the other birds got tired and they stopped their effort towards their truth. And so only 30 birds remained. And after a while, these 30 birds realized that they together were the phoenix. Ooh. Guys, like my thoughts are literally like trains at fast speeds I'm seeing like pass by. Like, it's like my trains of thought are just, sometimes I just see only the trails. I found that you have to learn to trust your mind's expression, and on a simple level, writing is the best way to do that. And I am a huge advocate of writing, you know, like just grabbing a pen and writing, not just typing, writing with a pen. Because the care and concern you give to every word when you write it is different, as if every word you write on the page, based on the emotion and how you've held the pen at the right angle, has a sort of shape and uniqueness. You learn to express your mind on paper, and you would do it so many times that eventually you realize your own style, literally how you as a being are comfortable moving through subjective landscapes. It's like, can we say an unevolving freedom is freedom? Sorry guys, I'm bit distracted right now, but I'll tell you this. Pretty much, I want to take your attention to how you feel your evolution happened, and based on how you think life happened for you, that dictates your intelligence. But eventually, you will see you have access to new viewpoints. Right now, we're in a world where it's as if, like, after you've scoped the forests of data, you will eventually look at how the data moves, in the most sophisticated way that data moves is as a sort of action. So your attention kind of gets, in a strange way, mystically street smart by first wondering, where is the attention present, where is your attention existing, what thoughts are emerging, how are these thoughts approaching, in some sense, a sort of the real you, which is just the witness of the moment. And so, where, like, in some sense, you will realize it's like, it's, this life is something to take charge of, but it's not to take charge of blindly. It's kind of like, you don't need to have the sword in your hand all the time. You keep it sheathed. In some sense, the mind of man, in some sense, basks in a sort of chaotic mastery that walks in bliss. So when I say this chaotic mastery, it means literally the forces of nature are animated by the man into sophisticated mythological level archetypes. And so that's man's kind of, the more man is worshiping a changing the world, the more it's realizing it's changing as well. And so it's like, how is the space being filled, the space of intelligence? Sorry guys, I have to head out right now. Thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste.